So before I get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation, as you can see here on the screen, if you can just create a list, and I'm sorry the sound is a little choppy here. If you can just create, maybe I'll try it without.
Yeah, I think you'd be fine with that.
Okay.
You have your mic straight up.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So if everyone can just do this one simple exercise before we get into the actual presentation. You can do this on your phone, you can do it in your head, wherever you would like to create this list. I'd like you to take a moment to create a list of the 10 most important people in your life. There are 3 rules to this list. 1, they have to be living. 2, they cannot be a celebrity, but I don't think I have to worry about that with this crowd here today. And 3, unfortunately, they can't be one of your pets, okay? So if you can just take a moment to create this list of the 10 most important people in your life right now, we'll be able to start the actual part of the presentation in just a few minutes afterwards. So again, 1, they still have to be living. 2, they cannot be a celebrity. And 3, they cannot be one of your pets. Okay, so if we can all just finish up, I'll go ahead and start introducing myself and go over today's presentation. My name is T. Cavagnaro. This is my husband, Jimmy, over here, and my mom is in the back. Loan is in the back over there, okay? And I know I don't sound like it, but I'm a Vietnamese refugee. I was born in Vietnam and escaped to America with the rest of my family at the end of the Vietnam War. And to be honest with you, I really didn't know much about my past for the most part of me growing up. And there are a few reasons for that. I didn't know much about my past because A, when I first came to America, I just wanted to be as Americanized as possible. I didn't want to be Vietnamese, I didn't want to stick out, I just wanted to be the same as everyone else. So I didn't want to get in touch with my Vietnamese roots because of that. And another reason why I didn't really know much about my past is because every single time I asked my parents or a Vietnam veteran a question about the Vietnam War, I was met with a lot of anger and really intense emotions, whether it be sadness or frustration or just a lot of negative things. A lot of crying, a lot of yelling. And you know, as a little kid, if you keep on asking questions that result in crying and yelling and anger, you learn pretty quickly to stop asking those types of questions. And then 3, I also didn't know much about the Vietnam War because there weren't a lot of Vietnam veterans who were advertising that they were Vietnam veterans, right? Here today, I see a lot of people wearing hats, shirts, etc., that help me know who a Vietnam veteran is. Now, some of you might not be wearing hats and shirts, so who here is not a Vietnam veteran? Raise your hand for me, please. Okay, so it's about 60-40 of a split here today between Vietnam veterans and non-Vietnam veterans. And I really appreciate all of you coming out to hear this story because a lot of people may have started recently hearing more about Vietnam veterans and the Vietnam War, but there's multiple sides to that story. And the first part of the equation is the war, and the second part is what happened to the Vietnam veterans, but there's a third part of that equation, and that involves the Vietnamese refugees, the people that the Vietnam veterans actually fought for. And today, what I plan on doing is telling you the story of me and my family's escape from Vietnam, and what that was all about, and how you all contributed to that. And I want to compare that to what happened with Vietnam veterans afterwards. And what I'm about to present to you today is the same presentation that I give to schools all across New Jersey, because I think it's really important that our students of today learn the truth about the Vietnam War, and not just what is being presented in textbooks or curriculums of today, okay? So, like I said before, I really didn't know much about my past. And probably about 10 years ago or so, in 2015, maybe even longer than that, around 2015, I started seeing more and more Vietnam veterans. It was the 40th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. And society was changing, and society was becoming a little bit more receptive to embracing and celebrating our Vietnam veterans. So I would see, Vietnam veterans with their hats, and I would see them with their patches and their jackets and bumper stickers on their cars. And I would see that, and I would come up to them and I would say, "Hi, I see that you're a Vietnam veteran. I'm a Vietnamese refugee, and I just want to thank you for everything that you did for me." And for the most part, that went really, really well. People, the Vietnam veterans, were a little surprised, like, what is this person doing? Why is she coming up to me? Sometimes I would give them a hug, and that was really like, whoa, what is happening here, right? But for the most part, it was a really positive experience that I had. And then one day, I would do this in person. If I was walking around in a store and I would see a Vietnam veteran, I would do this even driving in the car. Like if I would see a bumper sticker, I would pull up next to the car and I would honk and I would wave, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, hi," and not really understand what was happening. And then once social media started really taking off with your generation, because it wasn't always taking off with your generation, when social media started taking off with your generation, I extended my thanks to social media posts as well too. And one day on social media, on Facebook, I saw a post about the Vietnam War, about Vietnam veterans. And I said, I jumped in saying, "Thank you so much. I'm a Vietnamese refugee, and I just want to thank you." And this Vietnam veteran who I had never met before saw my thanks, saw that I was a Vietnamese refugee. And he responded, and he started saying that he was sorry. And I was so surprised about him saying that he was sorry. And I didn't understand where he was going with this. And he said he was sorry that he didn't kill all of my ancestors first. That didn't go the way I expected it to, at all. Here I am, I just want to say thank you. And someone's like, "I wish you and everybody else like you was dead." So that definitely made me take a pause and step back and reevaluate things. And most of the time, people in a situation like mine would have done one or two things. They would have argued right back, right? Got right in their faces, defended themselves. Who would have argued back at them? Raise your hands. There's no shame in doing so. You're not being mean to the person, you're just defending yourself at that point from being attacked. So let me ask that question again. Who would have argued back with that person? A couple more people would have raised their hands. Right, exactly. Because again, you're not going out of your way to hurt someone, you're just defending yourself. And then the other way that most people would react is by disengaging, right? Stepping back and being like, there's no logic in this whole entire situation. Arguing with strangers online never ends well, and I'm just gonna disengage and turn my back and walk away. But you know what? His reaction was so extreme and so negative to something so innocent and nice that it really bothered me. And it bothered me so much that I had to figure out why somebody would have that type of a reaction. And thank goodness it did that, because what I then discovered from talking to my parents, again, and talking to other Vietnam veterans, I found to be so profound that I felt it was really important to go and share everything that I learned with anyone who would be willing to listen. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about, again, my escape, me and my family's escape from the fall of Vietnam and the fall of Saigon. And we're going to compare our experiences with the experiences of the Vietnam veterans, okay? So for those of you who did not fight in the Vietnam War, do you know where Vietnam is? Okay, if you don't, here's a nice world map, okay, with the continents all in different colors. And if we were to zoom in, Vietnam is on all the way on the other side of the world. Because if you see, the United States is over here, Vietnam is in the continent of Asia, all the way on the other side of the world, boxed in yellow. And if we were to zoom in to the continent of Asia, you'll see that Vietnam is in the southeast corner of Asia. Okay? And if we were to zoom in a little bit more to Vietnam itself, you'll see that there is the capital of South Vietnam, Saigon, boxed in yellow. And that is where I was born on Christmas Day, 1973. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit, a couple of years after I was born. If we were to zoom into Saigon specifically, okay, you'll see that Saigon has like all these different neighborhoods. It's very similar to New York City with Chinatown and Little Italy and all these bustling neighborhoods, because it was a big city, the city of Saigon. And we didn't live in the city. My immediate family and I, we lived in the suburbs of Saigon across this river. This is the Saigon River. It was a big, major river. So just like New York City and the East River, with Long Island on the other side of the East River, that's what this was like. So we've got the city of Saigon and the Saigon River and the suburbs of Saigon, and that's where me and my immediate family lived in 1975. Now, speaking of my immediate family, who was in my family? We had my dad. My dad was 33 and a half-ish. I mean, still pretty young at that point, right? My mom, again, sitting in the back there, in 1975, she was only 26 years old, about, okay? So we've got a young couple who's trying to navigate their way around the Vietnam War. As if that wasn't bad enough as just a young couple, they had to take care of children in their family, of small children in their family. My dad had a daughter from a previous marriage where his wife unfortunately passed away, and she was 10 years old. Now, if you think about your kids, your grandkids when they were 10, they were little pains in the neck, right? They were little pains in the neck. They were running around. They weren't listening all the time. They weren't autonomous in any way whatsoever. You had to run around and take care of them and make sure that they stayed alive. And that was the same thing with my sister. And even at 10 years old, my sister was not the youngest in our family, because I was 1.5 years old during this time. So my parents, as a young couple, right, they're now dealing with a 10-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. I'm a toddler. I'm still running around in diapers, and I can barely run. And running is a very important trait to master when you're living in a war-torn country, right? But even at 1.5 years old, I was not the youngest in the family. No, because I had a younger brother, and my brother was 18 days old. 18 days old. He was literally just born. The only things he knew how to do were to eat and to sleep and to poop, basically, okay? And that was what our family was living with. But like many other families during that time, besides my parents and the 3 small kids, we also had a puppy dog, okay? So this is everybody in my family right now. So we're living in the suburbs in Vietnam, in Saigon. Why would we need to leave? Well, the house down the street got bombed. So that was a good indicator that it was time to go. And because the house down the street got bombed, that meant that the enemy was so close, they had the roads. We couldn't just hop in a car and drive away. We didn't just want to drive away. We had to rendezvous with the rest of our family. The rest of our family was living in the city of Saigon. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, everybody else was living in the city of Saigon. And we had to get back together with them. And we had to cross the Saigon River in order to do so. But we couldn't do so in a car over the bridge because, again, the enemy had taken over the area. So the only way out was through the back roads. And on the back roads, we couldn't take a car. On the back roads, we had to take 1 motorcycle. So how are we gonna get 1 motorcycle, a family of 5, out on 1 motorcycle? Well, we had my dad. My dad was gonna be driving. He was gonna be steering, okay? The other adult was my mom, and my mom was gonna be sitting behind my dad. And then after that, that's right. And then after, oops, there we go. My mom's gonna be sitting behind my dad. And then after my mom, we were gonna have my sister, who could sit in front of my dad holding the handlebars, because she was old enough to be able to hold the handlebars, you know, in case she feels like she's starting to slip around or something like that. But you know who couldn't hold on to anything? my brother. My brother was only 18 days old. Again, he could only eat, sleep, and poop. So my mom had to hold on to him like a football, because he was about the size of a football at that point. So she's holding on to him really, really tightly. And then that leaves me. Where am I gonna fit into this motorcycle? I squeeze myself in between my father's back and my brother's back. And if you notice, everybody is facing this way. We're all leaving the scene of destruction behind us, right? Everyone except for me. I'm the only one facing backwards. So instead of fleeing the scene of destruction, I just keep on facing that scene of destruction. And all I see are the houses that keep on burning brighter and harder because the fires keep on getting bigger and bigger from the bombs that keep on getting dropped. And all I keep on seeing are the dead bodies on the side of the road. And I'm only a year and a half. So I can't comprehend what is happening, but I know that this is a really, really scary time for me. So I keep on screaming to my parents, the fire's chasing us, the fire's chasing us, because I don't understand that it's just the fires getting bigger. I think the fires are chasing us, and our lives are literally at stake, and they have to go as fast as they can in order to outrun the fires. And because of this experience, my parents tell me that I had nightmares every single night for a year where I would scream, a blood-curdling scream, about the fires chasing us and waking everybody else up for a solid year every single day afterwards. And fortunately, they stopped on their own. And I've been asked, well, do you ever want to get in touch with those memories? No, no, definitely not. But they're buried deep down inside at some point. They might come out, and I hope they never ever do. So that's how you get a family of 5 out on one motorcycle. And my dad was skillful enough to be able to get everybody out without the motorcycle tipping over, without being apprehended by the enemy also, okay? But now what? You know, we've left our neighborhood, what's next? Well, the second part of our trip involves trying to cross the Saigon River. And to give you a better idea of how large that Saigon River is, here's a picture of the Goethals Bridge up in North Jersey. And the Goethals Bridge is the bridge that crosses over the Arthur Kill River that separates Staten Island from New Jersey, right around Newark Airport. And as you can see, the Goethals Bridge and the Arthur Kill River, it's a pretty wide, fast-flowing river, right? So how are my parents gonna get our whole family across this wide and fast-flowing river? Well, their plan was that they had brought with them a blow-up raft. And they were gonna put the kids, all the kids, the 10-year-old, the 1.5-year-old, the 18-day-old, inside this inflatable raft. And then my parents were going to swim alongside the raft. And they were going to hope that none of the kids freaked out and fell overboard and drowned while they swam alongside. That is just insanity for me to think that that was the only choice that they had at that moment. It was either doing that or staying behind and being captured by the enemy, right? And fortunately, they didn't have to do that because a police boat we caught the attention of a police boat who was like, excuse me, what are you doing? Why are you out here by the banks of the river with like these children who are about to get into a raft, and you know, what's happening here? And during that time of the Vietnam War, the communists who had infiltrated the south of Vietnam, they were called the Viet Cong. They weren't dressed in military fatigue. They were dressed in regular civilian clothes. So it was really hard to tell the difference between who was communist and who was not. So the police during that time, they're just like, you know what? This is what we're gonna do. If there's anything strange, we're just gonna round you up and interrogate you and straighten it out later on. But if you're acting weird, we're just going to apprehend you, okay? So that's what they did. So everyone, like when I get to this part of the story, they're like, oh no, you're trying to escape, and here you're getting arrested. You're getting arrested and you can't escape. This is the worst thing in the world. But it wasn't. It was a blessing in disguise, because instead of having to swim across this fast-flowing, wide river, we were transported across safely via the police boat, okay? So once there, my dad is like, he was born under like a lucky star or something, because everywhere he went, he was able to just find luck. And as luck would have it, when we got to the police station and the prison, one of the heads of the prison was one of his former students. My father was a professor at the University of Saigon. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" My dad explained what was happening, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, you want to get together with your, go ahead, go and rendezvous with the rest of your family." And so we did, and we were able to meet up with the rest of my family, my aunts, uncles, grandparents, okay? So what was the next phase of our escape? I mean, we were able to leave our neighborhood, we were able to cross the river. Now what? How are we gonna get out of Vietnam? Well, we had this bad boy in our back pocket. And unfortunately, it gets cut off in the bottom over there, right? But this was my uncle's boat. My uncle was the captain of a naval warship, the Chi Lang 2, HQ-08. And this warship, it was a mine destroyer. And this warship had a capacity of 104, plenty of space for our family to escape on. Thank goodness he was the captain and we were able to escape on this boat. And we definitely wanted to escape on this boat because you know what? It was not really an option to stay behind. Because if you stayed behind, you were gonna meet with death in one of two ways. One was a fast way, and that was just through execution. The communists would just line you up. They knew who was for them and who was against them. And they would just line you up and just execute you right in the street. And it sounds barbaric, but it was very practical because there were fewer mouths to feed, there were fewer people to worry about insurrections, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the kind way of meeting your fate of death. And the not so kind way of meeting your fate of death was through being put in a re-education camp. And the communists believed that if you didn't understand or follow along and agree with their way of living and their way of governing, it was just because you didn't understand it enough. So you needed to go to a re-education camp where they reteach you the communist ways. It was like summer school, you know? And it sounded like summer school because the word camp is in there, re-education, sounds like summer school. But a re-education camp was nothing more than a concentration camp. And everybody knows what a concentration camp is, right? So it was death either via execution or re-education camp, and nobody wanted either. Everyone wants to leave because everyone who was in Vietnam, who had a brain, knew what the communists were capable of and what they were going to do. So everybody wants to get out. But not everybody had an uncle who was the captain of a warship. You know, we were lucky, but not everybody else was as lucky. So how were they going to get out? Well, they were thinking, all right, I'm gonna find anyone with a boat. I'm gonna find anyone with a boat and I'm gonna pay them $1 million to get me space on that boat. And if I don't have any connections to a boat or I don't have enough money to pay somebody for space on that boat, I'm gonna find anything that could float. I'm gonna find this big tree branch and I'm just gonna jump in the water and float and try to get as far away. And it sounds crazy to do because honestly, there was a 50-50 chance of surviving a trip like that when you weren't on a boat. Jumping into the water, holding on to anything that would float, a 50-50 chance of surviving. There were dangerous marine animals, there were pirates, there was just exposure. There were so many ways that you could slowly and horrifically die. But people still took that chance because doing that was still a better option than staying behind with the communists. 800,000 people took that chance as boat people. And those odds of surviving were pretty accurate, where 50% of them perished. 400,000. That's almost 500,000 people who drowned, who chose that way of dying instead of staying behind to be treated poorly by the Communist Party. But we didn't have to do that because we had my uncle's boat. And his boat had a capacity of 104. So here's the thing, though. My uncle was related to us on my dad's side of the family. He was my father's younger brother. He was not blood related to my mom. So her whole family could not come with us. And there was a limitation on the number of people that others like her could bring on the boat. She could only pick 2 people from her family to bring with us. Just 2 people. And the rest of them had to stay back. And she came from a family of 10. And she could only pick 2. So she had to go back home and have this really heartbreaking, gut-wrenching conversation with her parents to choose which 2 people from her family were going to be coming with us and surviving. And she was one of the oldest in her family. So she had siblings all the way down to 3 years old, up to 21 years old. And she could only pick 2. And the rest were going to have to get stuck behind and die a fate of a quick execution or time in the re-education camps. But either way, they were going to die. So imagine at 26 years old, you're not even 26 yet, having to make this type of a decision in your life and having that weigh on you for the rest of your life, that you, because of your decision, you sent your other siblings to their graves. That's not something that most of us today could ever relate to, right? So I'd like you to go back to that first exercise that I asked you all to do in the beginning of this presentation, where you made a list of the 10 most important people in your life, okay? I'd like you all to choose 2 people from that list that you would save, knowing that the remaining 8 are going to perish. It's not going to be, oh, I'll see you next year. It's not going to be, oh, it's kind of far or wherever, or anything along those lines. It's, I am so sorry. I can't bring you with us. I know this means you're going to die, but this is the only choice that I have. So I'm going to give you all a minute to choose those 2 people in your lists, okay? Okay, everybody made their choices? Easy peasy, right?
No.
Right, exactly. I'm going to pick on you because you're the youngest in the room right now, okay? What is your name?
Katie.
Katie, can you stand up for me, please?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Katie, you had a list of the 10 most important people in your
Yeah.
life, right? And you made your choice of the 2. It was a hard choice.
Yeah.
What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to imagine the 8 people that you could not save standing here right in front of you. And I want you to imagine them looking right at you, and I want you to go through the motions of actually saying goodbye to them forever. Do you think you can do that?
It's gonna be hard, I guess.
It's going to be very, very hard,
Yeah.
right? So I want you to imagine them standing here, looking in their eyes, both of you understanding that this is a final goodbye, and that this is your choice in, unfortunately, having to say like a fateful goodbye like this. So I don't know who's on your list. I'm going to pretend like grandma's on your list or something like that, okay?
It's not.
Okay. Whoever is on your list, go ahead and just out loud start saying goodbye to the remaining people on your list. And tell me how that makes you feel inside.
Terrible. Like,
Terrible.
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. Do you think that you're going to be able to sleep well at night for the rest of your life?
No.
No. Do you think that, whatever type of person you were before, do you think that that's going to permanently change you afterwards?
Yeah, probably. I'm still young.
You're still,
Change it.
right. Well, how
It'll
old are
change
you?
everybody. 25.
So you're the same age as my mom was when she
Yeah,
had to make
almost.
this choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you imagine having to do that now in this country?
No.
Thank God we don't, right?
Right.
But my mom did. and this is our story. So, Katie, thank you so much for playing along with this. I think this is gonna sit with you for a little while, right?
It will.
Yeah. So my mom made her two choices of which two siblings she was going to save, and everyone said their goodbyes, and everyone was hysterically crying, and then we left. And when we got to the rendezvous point, which was a hotel right on the port, right on the banks of the Saigon River, my dad takes a look around, and he said, hey, he was only supposed to bring 2 people, and I see that he brought 3. And she brought 3 also, and so did he. Forget this. If no one is sticking to this 2-person rule, I'm not gonna stick to it either. And he ran back to my mom's family's house, and he burst into the door, and he said, everyone, just drop everything, come with me right now. No one's gonna get left behind. You don't have time to pack, just come with me right now. And everyone was able to make it onto the boat. So thank goodness that happened. Thank goodness my dad had the spine to be like, to notice it and to be like, I'm not gonna stick to this rule. I'm gonna save everybody in my family. So we get onto the boat, we get onto my uncle's boat, and we're leaving in the dark of night. It is April 30th, 1975. This is the day that Saigon fell to the Communist Party. And the city is just being destroyed in so many different areas, and we knew we had to get out. And we snuck out at 3 o'clock in the morning because we needed to sneak out under the cover of night. We didn't want the enemy to see us brazenly, just like leaving the country in a warship. 3 o'clock in the morning, we left the port. 7 hours later, 7 hours, not half a day, not a week, a month later, 7 hours later, the president of Vietnam surrenders. We made it out by the skin of our teeth. If we had dilly-dallied just a little bit, I may not be standing here today. And we realize that with the president's surrender, that's it. The war is officially over, and we have lost our country. And imagine thinking in our shoes today in this country, being in a position where you're like, that's it, we've lost our country? Is this really happening right now? And that's what was going through my mom's and my dad's heads on that day. And that day, April 30th, is always seen by the Vietnamese people who escaped Vietnam as the worst day in the history of Vietnam. And we always call it Black April because of that. Now we're on my uncle's boat. I mentioned before my uncle's boat had a capacity of 104 people. How many people do you think were on that boat when we pulled out of the port of Saigon? Any guesses? 230. 700. Okay. 230 sounds a little bit more reasonable. 700 sounds not as reasonable. Any other guesses? 450. So you're going a little, closer to the not as reasonable side over here. Anybody want to guess on this side over here? No, you just want these people to take the risk of guessing, right? At the end of the day, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when we pulled out of the port of Saigon, we had 998 people on the boat. 998 people, almost 10 times the capacity of the boat. So I was making fun of you, but it was just a red herring, Does this give you an idea, a better idea of how desperate everybody was? Do you see the plus sign? Oh, it's hard to tell over here, but there is a little plus sign at the bottom, okay? 998 people plus 1 puppy dog. Because my dad was able to go back to our house and save our dog as well. So the dog lives in this movie, okay? So we had 998 people plus one puppy dog. Now we're on the boat, but now we got to get out of Saigon, and we have to get out of Vietnam. And that Saigon River, you saw a little bit of it before. It was pretty twisty-turny. The rest of the river is just like that. Okay, so my uncle had to make his way down the twisty-turny Saigon River. As you can tell, it's very, very snaky. And I forgot to mention, the boat that we were on was only running on one engine out of the two engines that it normally had. And this was my uncle's strategy in being able to get the boat really close to shore. Because it's a warship. It's supposed to be out in the open blue water. It's not supposed to be close to land. But he's like, no, I have to make sure that we're close by so that people can get onto my boat easily. And the way that he did that was by saying, my boat needs maintenance. Yeah, the engines need to get serviced. And then he would tell the people, oh, don't take out both engines at the same time. Don't ask me why, but don't take out both engines. So he had one engine on so that we could escape very quickly if we needed to, and we did need to. But when we escaped, we only had one engine, okay? And that engine, people are like, oh, okay, so it's just running on half the power, so you just go slower. No, that engine's on one side of the boat. That means that when you rev that one engine on one side of the boat, you know how the boat goes? It turns. It turns, right. So how is a boat that turns in one direction gonna make its way down this twisty-turny Saigon River? My uncle had to actually lightly bump the boat along the way to make it ricochet off. But not so hard with the bumping, because he didn't want to damage it, just enough to make it turn just enough without risking the lives of almost 1,000 people on his ship. And he was extremely skilled. He was actually the youngest captain in the history of the South Vietnamese Navy. And there was a reason why, obviously, right? So we make our way down the twisty-turny Saigon River. Yes, we're out in the bay. Now what? What do we do from here? So he calls his commander and he's like, okay, I don't really know where to go from here. And his commander says, well, look, down here. Oh, there's another, it's hard to tell. But there is a set of islands called Constant Island, okay? And all the rest of the remainder, the remnants of the South Vietnamese Navy, they were all collecting in Constant Island. So he was like, come on down to Constant Island. We're all here. We're all here. And guess what? We are not alone, because we are here with the U.S. Navy. Amen. The U.S., the 7th Fleet. The 7th Fleet was there with us, and they were protecting the remnants of the South Vietnamese Navy. And they were also going to try to protect us as we traversed over to the closest friendly territory, which would be the Philippine Islands, okay? There are a lot of great stories about the boats that were part of the U.S. 7th Fleet, but I want to focus on one particular boat. This is the USS Kirk. The USS Kirk was not supposed to be in this area of the South Pacific and the South China Sea. It was just kind of like hanging out in Japan and stuff. And they were like, no, go to Saigon. And they're like, okay, do what? Just go there. Okay, so they went there. So they're hanging out, they're waiting for orders and stuff like that and what to do. When all of a sudden they hear, they look up ahead and they see this South Vietnamese helicopter circling over them. And they're like, and they can't tell if he's a friendly or not a friendly. They've got their guns aimed right at this helicopter, right? And the helicopter keeps on circling and circling. And somehow, the pilot of that helicopter was able to convey to the crew members of the USS Kirk, hi, can we land on your boat? And they're like, what? No, we can't just like give authority for a vehicle from another country to land on our boat, because that's basically, entering another country right there. They're like, sorry, we can't do that. And the helicopter pilot says, yeah, see, we're not just soldiers. We've got women and children on board. We're trying to escape Vietnam, and we're running out of fuel. And we have no place to land. And if you don't let us land, we're gonna crash into the ocean. We're all gonna drown and die. So, what do you say? And so the captain of the USS Kirk looked and talked to his crew members, and he was like, I don't have the authority to allow this to happen. but damned if I'm gonna stand aside and watch all of these people drown. So he gave the green light to that Vietnamese helicopter pilot, and he said, go ahead, you can go ahead and land on our boat. And the dozens of women and children and other members of that helicopter crew were able to be saved because of the captain's decision that day. And no sooner did that helicopter land, did they hear, "Ba, ba, 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 ba." Again, another helicopter. It's another Vietnamese helicopter, and they're same thing. Hi, can you let us land? And the Kirk was like, do you not see that we already have a helicopter on the only place that we can land a helicopter on our boat? So we don't have any more parking spaces. And they say, yeah, the same thing, you know, people, women and children, we're running out of gas, we're gonna drown, die. What do you say? And they all looked at each other and they said, we have no space. We have no space. What are we gonna do? This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go all behind this helicopter over here. We're gonna stand behind it and we're gonna push and push and push and shove it overboard. And we're gonna make space for that second helicopter. And that's exactly what they did. They pushed it overboard, made space for the second helicopter. The second helicopter was able to land, and all dozens of those people were able to be saved as well. So they did that for the second helicopter. And they did that for the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. They did this for 16 helicopters that day. 16 helicopters, and all of their members on board were saved because of the actions and the decisions of the crew, the captain and the crew of the USS Kirk. And between that and their, and how they chaperoned us to the Philippines afterwards, this whole act has been called the greatest humanitarian mission in the history of the US Navy. These are just some of the heroic acts that we Vietnamese refugees experienced from the US military. Now, getting back to our specific journey over to, onto freedom, we needed to go to the Philippines. And it took us a long 8 days, because it was 1,000 miles to get to the Philippine Islands. And it wasn't just 1,000 miles of like regular ships. There were ships that were so slow because they only had half the power on their ship, and they were slowing everybody else behind because they couldn't leave any stragglers behind. That would endanger the rest of the fleet formation at that point. So it took us 8 days. There's not a lot of food, water, anything. People are like, did you get snacks? And I'm like, what? No, we didn't get snacks during that time. Like, this is not a cruise. This is a fight for our lives. It took us 8 days to get to the Philippines. And we got to the Philippines, we're like, yes, freedom. And the Philippine government said, stop, do not enter. No, you are not allowed in. And we're like, what are you talking about? We're the good guys. We're the South Vietnamese, not the North Vietnamese. And the Philippine government said, yeah, but I'm looking at all these ships and I see South Vietnamese flags. And according to my records, a week ago, South Vietnamese fell to the Communist Party. There is no more South Vietnam. All these ships belong to North Vietnam, which are communists, which are our enemy, and we're not about to let enemy ships enter into our ports. So we were like, oh my gosh, we're screwed. What do? We can't go forward. We obviously can't go back. What do we do? So the two governments, the US government and the Philippine government, had to make very quick discussions and negotiations with each other. And what they agreed on was that the US government basically said, you know what? All of these South Vietnamese naval ships, they're actually US ships. We loaned them to the South Vietnamese Navy at the beginning of their war, but they're all our ships. So what if we take them back? We take them back and we show that we took them back by putting American flags on them. And that way, you can officially say that you let in American ships to your port and not any enemy ships to your port. And the Philippine government said, yeah, that's a good idea, no problem. So everyone sighed a big, sigh of relief, and the US government went to all the South Vietnamese Navy captains, and they said, good news, You can move in, you can go through the port. We just have to do this quick, flag switcheroo thing. And then all of a sudden, the South Vietnamese captain said, whoa, whoa, hang on. What do you mean, do a quick flag switcheroo? This is our flag. This is our beloved flag. This represents our country that we have not given up on yet. The president of South Vietnam may have surrendered, but we have not given up on the idea of a free Vietnam yet. We're not going to do this, disrespectful switcheroo thing, right? We don't want to give up our flags. And the South Vietnamese and the U.S. Navy was like, this is non-negotiable, guys, okay? You have to realize that. And so the South Vietnamese captain said, okay, fine, non-negotiable, we get it. But at least give us the ability to do like a respectful service in saying goodbye to our flags. And so they agreed to doing that. And at 12 o'clock the next day, everyone, all of the South Vietnamese captains, their crew members, any other members of the ship that were able to get onto the decks of the ship, got onto the decks of the ship, sang the South Vietnamese national anthem for the very last time, for what they thought would be the very last time they could ever sing it, saluted the flag, and then lowered it for what they felt would be the very last time. And then they went and they raised the American flag, and they were able to go and sail into the port. Now, this part of the story doesn't really sound like much, like, okay, you sang, you lowered the flag, and you were able to go in. Big deal, right? Well, to help you really get into the shoes of what we Vietnamese refugees went through, I'm going to ask you all to partake in another short exercise, where we're going to put the shoe on the other foot, and we're going to pretend that we are on a ship, and we are an American ship, but we've lost our country, and we have to say goodbye to our flag before we enter in another country. And we're all going to stand up, and we're all going to sing the national anthem as if it was the last time we would ever sing our national anthem. And we're going to say goodbye to our flag. So if you could all stand up, please, and if you could all pay attention to the words of the national anthem as well, too, because some of the words are very ironic, because we're talking about the flag still waving free over the lands of the free and the brave. And it's not, because just a couple minutes later, it's being lowered.
The reason we do this is we do this presentation mostly to children in high schools and elementary schools, and they don't get it, right? They don't understand. And the one thing that T had said earlier, one of the phrases was "the president surrenders." Can you imagine picking up your phone and the president surrenders our country? It's inconceivable to an American, and especially to young people. And this is a good way for us to show them the difference, because they feel safe in the United States. They've always felt safe. And that's it.
Everyone's standing.
The end.
Okay, so this is a picture of, an actual picture of one of the crew members of the South Vietnamese naval ships saying goodbye to the Vietnamese flag before it is lowered. And as you can see, all the crew members are on deck saluting the flag for the last time. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Now, if everyone everyone can remain standing, please. We are going to be lowering this flag. I'm going to ask my mom to come up. And we're going to be raising a new flag that we have to pledge allegiance to. National anthem that everybody has to learn, okay? So it's going to be written in, I think, English on the top. Chinese, Vietnamese, or it's going to be written a couple different languages. But this is the new national anthem that you have to learn. Bây giờ mọi người ngồi xuống được. Bây giờ mọi người ngồi xuống được. Mọi người ngồi xuống đi. Mọi người ngồi xuống đi. Từ giờ trở đi đó, Thi sẽ nói chuyện trong tiếng Việt Nam. Ok? Tại vì nếu mà mọi người dọn từ nước Mỹ tới Việt Nam đó mà không có học tiếng Việt Nam đó thì cái đó nghĩa là mọi người sẽ không có đi học được. Và nếu mà mọi người không có đi học được đó thì cái đó nghĩa là mọi người sẽ không có tìm việc được. Và nếu mà mọi người mà không có tìm việc được đó thì cái đó nghĩa là mọi người sẽ không có tiền. Không có tiền cho mua mấy thứ giống như là cell phone hay là giày sneaker hay là xe hay là nhà hay là thức ăn. Và nếu mà mọi người mà không có tiền cho mua thức ăn đó thì cái đó nghĩa đó là mọi người sẽ chết đói luôn. Get it? Crystal clear? Yeah. So this is what my family and I went through, where we went from one language and one ship to a totally different language in the next breath on the other ship. And as you saw with the words, and as you heard with me speaking and the national anthem, Vietnamese is very different from English, right? But my parents learned the language really, really quickly. Now, do you all think that you'd be able to learn that language very, very quickly?
No.
Who says no? Raise your hands. Who says yes? Raise your hands. All of you are wrong. You're all wrong. I'll tell you why. Because you all think that you couldn't learn the language because you didn't have to.
Correct.
But if your survival and if your kids' survival depended on it, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to learn that language and learn it as quickly as possible, right? So how lucky are we that we don't have to be in that position? And people don't realize that. People don't realize that. So anyway, we changed the flags. We were able to go into the port of the Philippines. And as soon as we got on land, the Philippine government said, "Welcome to the Philippines. Now get out." Get out, because they didn't want any refugees on their land officially. They didn't want to get politically involved with the repercussions of that. So we did not spend a single night in the Philippines. We were immediately loaded up onto this cargo ship, the U.S. Sergeant Truman Kimbrough. 30,000 of us, I believe, were loaded up onto this cargo ship. No? Too many?
Yeah.
There were a lot. I know, we're little though. We can fit, you know? So anyway, there were a lot of people that were loaded up onto this cargo ship, and we went from the Philippines directly to Guam, to tent cities in Guam, refugee camps that were tents, where we waited for word on which country was going to take us in as refugees. Because you know what? Here's the thing. there were a lot of countries that wanted to help the Vietnamese refugees, but not all the countries had the ability to. You know, you can't just be like, yeah, I want to help and bring them in. Well, can you support them? No, but just bring them in. Couldn't do that. That's not practical. It's just like everyone here wants to end world hunger, right? There's nobody here who does not want to end world hunger. But does everybody here have the ability to personally end world hunger? No. So that's where we were faced with waiting for the countries that A, wanted to help the Vietnamese refugees, and two, could financially help the Vietnamese refugees. And out of all the countries that were willing to do so and could do so, and there were a lot of countries that were willing and could do so, out of all of them, you know where we want to go? The United States. Everyone wants to go to the United States because it was the best country back then and now. And now, there is a reason why everyone is so desperate to come to the United States and not so desperate to leave the United States, right? And that's how we felt back in 1975 and still feel today. So we waited for that golden ticket, you know? We didn't have any control over where we were gonna go. But on June 2nd, 1975, we got the good news. We were going to the United States. And not only us, not only my immediate family, but our whole extended family members, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, all my cousins, we were all going to the United States, and we were all going to the same refugee camp. And we were able to do this because my uncle was able to get everybody over to Guam at the same time, and we were all registered at the same time, so we were all able to get flights out at the same time in the same location. So we fly over to the United States, and we wind up in Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. There were only 4 refugee camps in the United States at that time, and we went to the one in Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. And before we even got off the plane, we were met with all of this help from the Americans, because they opened the doors and everyone's shivering because we only had the clothes that were on our backs, and they were meant for the tropics and not June in the Northeast. So the flight attendants were like, oh my gosh, here, take my slippers. These are my slippers, take them. I don't need them. This is my blanket. Take my blanket as well, too. And if you look out the window of the airplane, you'll see there's a bus, a school bus. And on that school bus, there are boxes and boxes and bags of tons of clothes that we were able to collect from all the different communities and neighborhoods, because we knew that you all needed a little bit of help in starting over in the United States. And we couldn't believe all the help that we had gotten. And this is a picture of our sponsor family, because every refugee family had a sponsor that helped them to, get themselves back on their feet, learn the language, learn the ways of this new country of theirs. This is our sponsor family. This is Mr. Mooney. For those of you who watched soap operas in the 70s and 80s, his face might look a little familiar because he was a star in All My Children. He played Paul Martin in All My Children. And Mr. Mooney and Mrs. Mooney, his wife, took in our family. Mrs. Mooney was a star of her own accord. She was an internationally famous opera singer. And she would go around the world singing in different opera houses, like the Vienna Opera House and other opera houses. And she was so good at her craft that she actually founded the opera program at Rutgers University. Mr. and Mrs. Mooney had 2 young boys, Sean and Will, and they completely transformed their basement into a 3-bedroom apartment just for our family. And they taught us English, and they taught us how to find a job, how to get a car, all the basic things. And they didn't stop with our family, because when they heard that my uncles and their families were not getting along with their sponsors, they said, no, we're not gonna let that happen. Have them move in with us as well, too. So they had our family of 5, they had my other uncle's family of 4 and my other uncle's family of 7 all living with them at the same time to help us all out. We had an amazing experience with help as Vietnamese refugees in this brand new country of ours that we were not born in, that we just started pledging our allegiance to. But what about the Vietnam veterans? The ones who fought for us. Here's a picture of some Vietnam veterans. For those of you who are not a Vietnam veteran, take a look at these pictures. Do they look like seasoned men to you? No. They were babies. They were babies. And most of them were ripped out of school if they were drafted at 18 and were forced to go fight a war in a country they had never heard of before for a reason they weren't really clear on, and not even given the right tools to try to be successful at their task, which was to win the war. But you weren't given the right tools to be able to do so. And a lot of these guys were like, no, I'm answering the call of duty. I'm answering my nation's call. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I don't care that I'm gonna come back handicapped. I know I'm gonna lose like a leg, an arm, a friend, multiple friends. I know that. But that's okay, because you know what? We are gonna be heroes. We are gonna get a big welcome home parade when we get back home. All of our uncles did, all of our fathers did. That's what's gonna happen, right? Wrong. Wrong. Little did they know what was happening in America while they were in Vietnam. And when they came back home, not only did they not get the welcome home, but they were met with people who immediately picked fights with them. Our friend Rick in the back here, he hadn't even made it home yet, and he was getting into a fist fight with strangers in the street who just targeted him because he was a Vietnam veteran. Because people didn't believe in the war. They were being fed propaganda by the media that thought that they were being told the truth by people in Vietnam without realizing that they were getting their information from communist spies. And they turned the whole country against the Vietnam veterans. And instead of being angry at our government for putting people in this position, they took it out on the soldiers who had no choice, no control over having to go, having to fight. Because if they didn't, it was illegal, and they would get jailed for it. It wasn't a choice. And, you know, when they came back home, they're like, okay, I get it. Society doesn't like me. Let me just keep my head down. Let me just kind of try to start my life over and pick up where I left off. I couldn't go to college, so I'm gonna try to go to college now. And the colleges would see that this applicant had great grades, really good extracurricular activities. Oh, were you a Vietnam veteran? Yes, I was. Yes, sir, I was. Yeah, we don't want Vietnam veterans going to our school. It's unheard of to think that that was happening. Could you imagine somebody saying that now? Right. It sounds like I'm making stuff up. This is what was happening. And then they're like, okay, well, maybe school's not for me, because schools are kind of rejecting me, and let me just focus on getting a job. They go into an employer, and the employer would be like, okay, yeah, good work ethic, and you can do all of these hours. Perfect. Hey, did you fight in the Vietnam War? Yes, sir, I did. Yeah, no, we don't want any Vietnam veterans working here either. You can just turn around and walk right back out. Okay, so now we've got Vietnam veterans who don't know where to go, right? Their neighbors are against them, their community is against them, the schools are against them, the jobs are against them. You know who is totally gonna understand? The veterans organizations, yes. So they walk through the doors of the veterans organizations and they're like, oh, refuge. Finally, somebody who understands me. And the veterans organization said, no, no. We don't want any Vietnam veterans coming into our organization. You guys are an embarrassment to us. They were wrong. They were dead wrong. But this is what everyone was thinking back then. But could you imagine the one place where you think people are gonna understand and get what you went through? They say, no, go ahead, no, we don't want you. You fought in this war. You were the first ones to lose a war. And you guys didn't lose any war. You guys didn't lose any war, okay? The government kept one hand behind your back, but you didn't lose any war. So thinking about all of this, everything that Vietnam veterans went through, and that's just with them, God bless you. That didn't even extend to other things about being a Vietnam veteran, like how there were so many of your buddies who were missing, could have been prisoners of war. There were over 1,000 of them, almost 2,000 that were missing and prisoners of war just for Vietnam, that were left behind. And the government did not do their responsibility in getting them and finding them and getting them back quickly. And they rolled over when the communist government said, no, we're not gonna give you access to this area to retrieve your loved ones. You have that survivor's guilt of all those people that you left behind because you're not supposed to leave anyone behind in the military. But you are now put in this position of knowing that there are those that are still left behind. And decades later, we have Agent Orange still haunting all of you. Agent Orange was supposed to be safe. That's what the government swore as they sprayed you completely with it. And years later, not only you, but your children are being afflicted with all different types of cancer. After all of this, learning all of this, that was my aha moment. When I think back to that Vietnam veteran who attacked me online and said that he was only sorry that he didn't kill all of my ancestors first. Because I realized, oh my God, if I was in his position and I suffered all of these losses, and losses, personally, through my friends, et cetera, where everywhere I turned, Vietnam veterans were not allowed, I would feel that way too about somebody like me. It wasn't me personally, right? We didn't know each other from anyone, but I was a representation of all the horrific things that he went through. And I got it. And I felt so badly. I felt so badly and I felt so guilty that so many of you guys put your lives on the line, lost your friends, for people like me and my mom. You didn't know what type of people, what type of a citizen I was gonna be, but you still took that chance in trying to protect me and trying to keep me free. And you've suffered your whole entire lives because of it, while I had the luxury of growing up free and protected from everything that you held deep down inside. Because we know our Vietnam veterans didn't talk about this. We know our Vietnam veterans took all of those horrific experiences and buried them deep down inside and didn't talk about it for years, for decades, for most of your lives. And we know that simple repression doesn't work because it's just gonna explode in other ways. And it did. A lot of our Vietnam veterans suffered with alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, and suicide, because there was no way of letting it out, no support system in letting it out. So once I learned all of this, and my husband knew most of it, but not the extent that we learned after we started really digging into things. That's when we said, we're going to change this. We're going to turn it around. And instead of having Vietnam veterans be not welcomed, we were going to create an organization where we thanked Vietnam veterans. And we call it Thanking Vietnam Veterans in Barnegat. And we started off with some, homemade things like finding Vietnam veterans on the street and inviting them to dinners. We would host dinners for Vietnam veterans in small groups at a time. And these are just some pictures of some of the group dinners that we've had in the past. And we found all these Vietnam veterans literally by just seeing somebody on the street wearing a hat, inviting them, giving them some information, church bulletins, word of mouth. And it grew that there was a Vietnamese refugee who was just so thankful for everything that Vietnam veterans had done that she just wanted to treat you guys out to a dinner, drinks. Keep it small, keep it intimate so that we could actually talk to you. And then we took it a step further and we're like, we want to reach more Vietnam veterans. So we went and we had this monument built in your honor. It is the only monument of its kind in the whole country where it is a Vietnam veterans monument that was completely paid for by a Vietnamese refugee. And this monument was dedicated on the first official National Vietnam War Veterans Day on March 29th, 2018 in Barnegat, New Jersey. So if you're ever up in Barnegat, come on down and look at this monument that was made lovingly in your honor. And we, as a send-off from that monument dedication ceremony, we now host annual ceremonies for Vietnam veterans every year around Vietnam Veterans Day. And we host it inside Barnegat High School, and as you can see, it's very, very well attended. Several of you here have gone to our events and can vouch for how well attended it is, because you know what? It's not just us trying to say thank you to our Vietnam veterans. It's the whole community coming together. The whole community comes together and they donate food for this event. The whole community comes together and they make sure that the greetings are big and loud and proud at the event. The whole community comes together, decorates the insides of the schools that the veterans are walking down. And we get all the kids, all the student groups involved in our event, like the ROTC cadets, like the marching band, the Boy Scouts, the chorus. We highlight kids who want to just show their appreciation for veterans, like this 9-year-old who turned down Disney World. Disney World! He was on spring break. His parents wanted to take him to Disney World. And he was like, wait, is Mrs. T gonna have her event? Because if she is, I wanna be at the event instead of Disney World. Children are amazing when you let them know about what Vietnam veterans went through because they want to help. They totally, totally want to help. And we've been able to have really cool things like reunions between Vietnamese refugees that were involved in Operation Baby Lift, which was an operation where it was Amerasian children of American soldiers and Vietnamese women who were going to get killed if they were left behind. So the US government created Operation Baby Lift, and they tried to get as many babies out of the orphanages and into the United States for adoption. And this one baby from Operation Baby Lift, Steve Hartman, see it over here with the guitar, he's a professional musician. His dream came true at one of our events by being reunited with one of the crew members of Operation Baby Lift. And he wrote a song dedicated to him and to other Vietnam veterans that he was able to play for that Operation Baby Lift crew member. And that,
for all the veterans,
here's a snippet of that song.
if you've ever wondered if anything you've ever done made any difference, I hope today brings you some peace, and it mattered to me.
It mattered to him. If you ever wondered if anything you did ever made a difference, it does.
When you ask if you are loved, you are.
And we get other schools besides Barnegat involved. We have Seton Hall University, we have Central Regional High School, we have Southern Regional High School. They all come in force And here's a quick video of how many students, how many students get involved in our color guard. That's the Barnegat High School Navy color guard walking through. After them is Central Regional High School coming through. After them, it is Southern Regional High School coming through. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Seton Hall, Central Regional, this is Southern Regional right here. And then we also even had members of the Sons of the American Revolution also taking place in the color guard at our event. And our event is made to try to give you all the hero's welcome that you never got when you first came home, where the hallways were lined with students clapping and cheering as each veteran walked down. And here's a little snippet of what that looked like and sounded like.
That's me.
Yes, that's Jimmy. And keep in mind, like I said before, this presentation and all of the participation that I get from the students, this presentation is given to the students before our annual events because we want them to know why they're volunteering. We don't want them to just show up and just be like, all right, I'm just filling out some volunteer hours, checking off boxes. No, they hear the story of what happened so that when they do participate in our event, they look at Vietnam veterans with an understanding in their eyes. And the Vietnam veterans see that and appreciate that. So we take this presentation and we give it to schools all over the state. The New Jersey Education Association has also highlighted us in their magazine to help more schools know about what we teach. So I want you to realize that your story, the real story, is not going to get forgotten. If Jimmy and I can help it, we are going to be continuing to talk about this as loudly and as proudly as possible. And with that, I thank you all for coming to listen to our story today. Please. I hope that for Vietnam veterans, this has filled in some blanks. This has finished some equations in your part of the war to realize that we're the people that you helped. Your efforts were not for naught, and they are deeply, deeply appreciated. And finally, the rest of the country is realizing that as well, too. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming here today to tell your story and honor all our Vietnam veterans, including the spirit of the countless legacies preserved within these walls. My father, being one of them, would have been very honored to meet you, and I believe he probably had a front row seat today. Your ongoing tribute helps ensure their service and sacrifice live on in history and in our hearts, and we are deeply grateful for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for me? Would anyone like to say anything?
Okay.
Yes.
On behalf of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 955, we'd like to have you to have the walk-on.
Thank you so much.
That's where I met Vincent Lorenzo. Yeah, what a kid.
Yeah.
Young man today.
Yep.
Thank you, T, for
Thank
all
you
you
so
do.
much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
I was when I'm in 68, 69.
Oh.
An interpreter.
I'm sorry.
Was your uncle an interpreter?
He was not. No, he was a captain.
I
My
know.
mom was an
Well,
interpreter.
we trained them run the boats.
So
We had interpreters that worked with our on the
oh.
boats down the Delta and
Oh.
Dong Tao. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, he
No.
was not.
Okay.
His English is still not that good, actually. 50 years later, it's still not that good.
We needed him to speak Vietnamese.
Oh, right.
You know, that's what we needed.
Right,
He
right.
understood what we were saying. You know.
Right.
But thank you.
No, thank you.
I got a little book I was going to give you, but it's Vietnamese poetry. It's called Captured Documents. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It might help you know where you came from.
Okay.
It's all written by your people.
Gotcha.
Who are great people. I work with them a lot.
There's a lot
the
of them.
fishing
Yeah.
people. That's what we did. There's seamen.
Thank you so much.
Excellent seamen. Excellent seamen.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to get the book and you can have it, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hi.
Before you were born, in the 68 and 69, this is the captain.
Way before I was born, yeah.
Well, this is the captain of our ship. We got called over there for the Tet Offensive. And they formed all these green crews. The U.S. Navy did. They shrunk our basic training from 11 weeks to 8 or 9.5 weeks, something like that. But we were still doing call for help missions in 68. So it didn't start with you.
right.
U.S. Navy. And here, I'm going to give this to you.
Okay.
And you can read these two examples here of what we were doing, as well as helping out over there in Vietnam. And like I say, that's our captain there. And we were up for awards for our mission, but the admiral's brother got the award.
Oh.
We were one of the few ships from the 6th Fleet, which is the Atlantic Fleet. We were transferred to Southeast Asia in the 7th Fleet in 68.
Okay.
I graduated basic training just in time for that.
Oh my gosh, lucky you, right?
So I want you to have this.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome to stay, ask questions, talk among yourself. Please help yourself to the refreshments. And thank you so much for coming.
I met a Green Beret medic.
Catch a calendar for the next one, which is October 11th. But
Thank you so much.
Spent 11 months in a hospital, was released. The negativity was so bad, he went up in the mountains and found a cave to live in.
Oh my gosh.
But the Rangers, some years later, found him and told him, "You're wanted in Washington, D.C. for the Medal of Honor
Oh
for
my
his service."
gosh. Wow. Wow. That's a nice way of ending that story. Hi.
Have you ever heard of Rolling Thunder, the motorcycle?
So I am their keynote speaker for their national convention conference this year.
I can't do the motorcycle groups anymore, but in the, I guess it was 80s, mid-80s, early 80s, I did one of the runs. And the one thing that I saw when I was down there was the Vietnamese community that came out. I was astonished. Really, that meant a lot. I mean, that was in
We're
the
the
80s,
ones, right?
But, you know, it's
Right.
so that's before. You know, I think Desert Storm and all that changed.
Yep.
You know, for us.
Yep.
But yeah, that was just to see genuine gratitude.
Yep. That's how we feel. We just don't always convey it. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just need like a loudmouth like me to like say something, but it's still always there.
Yeah, obviously, thank you. Yeah, it was just amazing at that point.
No.
Just to let you know, it just got that other members of the community that have done it.
Yep.
Tremendous.
Yep. It's good to know. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My wife and I had the honor to go back to Vietnam in 2008.
Okay.
I was part of a thing called the Friends of Da Nang, and we had built schools and all that sort of stuff after and worked with them. And have you been back to Vietnam?
I have not because my mom goes all the time.
Okay.
But she made it sound so not wonderful for me to go back that I was like, forget it. That she just no because
where she goes with the memories.
no, it was because she was like, okay, listen, when you go back, we're gonna have to stay at my friend's house, and we're gonna have to share a twin bed, and we're gonna have to share a bathroom, and you're gonna have to bring several $1,000s as gifts. And I was like, no, I tap out. I'm tapping out. I don't want to do any of that.
We went back and